Alright, let's get counting. Number 10 took advice from a serial killer. Sort of. In one of the volumes of Fool Killer, Deadpool makes a cameo appearance when he visits his pal Gregory Salinger, who is the mass murderer Fool Killer, a man who kills anyone he deems a fool. Though he wasn't the first to don the mantle Fool Killer, Salinger has his own interpretation of what makes someone a fool. Often he has associated foolishness with those who are obsessed with the material, or anyone who he is considered mediocre. Quite dangerous, as mediocrity can be very interpretive. He tried to take out both the Defenders and Spider-Man and almost killed himself after hearing someone remark that anyone who would take on Spider-Man was a fool. He spent some time in a mental hospital after being declared criminally insane. Later he got his degree in psychology, and during Deadpool's cameo attempts to give him a therapy session. Deadpool also reminisces about the time he wanted to kill Salinger, and he ties up his girlfriend, who he confesses he really doesn't like, even going so far as to suggest that she should just die. Number 9 forced cannibalism on Archangel. When Archangel was left wasting away, Deadpool stepped in to save him. At first sight in the comics, this appeared to be a kindness of Deadpool. He was trying to help his buddy to stay alive, effectively feeding him and saving him. Then Angel wanted to know what he was eating, and it was revealed that Deadpool was actually feeding his teammate his own flesh without Angel's consent. In other words, he was forcing Archangel into an act of cannibalism. So sure, he was saving his life, but you should probably give your teammate the opinion as to whether or not they want to eat your flesh. I also can't imagine that Deadpool would taste great. Number 8 killed classic literary heroes. In Deadpool Illustrated, which is not considered canon, Deadpool extends his wrath for the Marvel Universe to even any literary figures who inspired the very characters he has hunted. He goes after Moby Dick, Scrooge, the Musketeers, Sherlock Holmes, and even puts an end to the characters of Little Women. Harsh. This may be an awful deed that Deadpool accomplished, but it also is a must-read, as Cullen Bunn is the writer behind the 4-issue series. Cullen Bunn is also known for his non-Marvel comic book work in the horror series Harrow County, which you should also read if you haven't already read it. Number 7 killed his own parents. Of course, this wasn't of Deadpool's own volition per se. That is, he didn't know that they were his parents, as he had been brainwashed by the butler and had his mind wiped. Still, he returned to his parents' home in Canada, who again he didn't remember. He was sent there to kill them as a test to see how much control Butler had over Wade. Upon his arrival, he experiences some deja vu, and Sabretooth tells him that he could always just, not follow through on the job, starting to feel a little bad for Deadpool. But Deadpool doesn't really understand why he wouldn't do the job. A job's a job, he says. But the Canadian superhero team Alpha Flight shows up and interrupts them. Later on, Deadpool actually returns to his parents' house to finish the job. He seems to recognize the home and some items in it, but he still does not flinch, removes the smoke alarms, and sets the home ablaze with his sleeping parents inside. Number 6 enslaved a man. Chef Deadpool has kind of become almost an alternate or alter ego of Deadpool's himself. He has his own pop figure and is what people refer to when Deadpool is sporting his chef's hat, and usually he's cooking something up as well. In case you didn't know, Deadpool's regeneration factor also pretty much gives him a bottomless stomach, meaning he can eat an insane amount of food, and that you shouldn't expect to win an eating contest against him anytime soon. He loves pancakes so much he even made over 300,000 of them one time. But more than pancakes, one of Deadpool's favorite foods to eat is obviously the chimichanga. I get it, I had my first chimichanga earlier this year because of Deadpool when I was in Arizona, and they are by far one of the best things that you will ever eat. So good. His love of chimichangas drove him to do something dastardly though, when he is shown keeping a man he calls Paco as his slave in a tiny oven, where the man is forced to make him an endless amount of chimichangas. The man just wants to go home to his family, but Deadpool reminds him that the oven could get a lot hotter should Paco cease cooking up chimichangas for him. Number 5 wore fur, and real fur too. Okay, so this has less to do with the actual wearing of real fur specifically, and more to do with the fact of who the fur used to belong to. During the events of Deadpool Kills the Marvelverse, Deadpool eliminates almost all of the X-Men by using Cyclops' optic blasts after he has captured Professor X. Somewhere in between this and when Wolverine shows up to avenge his fallen X-Men, Deadpool manages to get his hands on Beast's fur and fashions himself a headpiece. Wolverine's healing factor appears to have met its match in Deadpool's carbonadium sword, and Wolverine is taken down by Wade while he wears Logan's fallen teammate's fur like a sadistic trophy. How dare you wear Beast? Fashion faux pas. Number 4 used his daughter as bait. For those of you that don't know, Wade Wilson has a daughter, little Ellie Camacho. Wade generally tries to keep some distance between him and Ellie and her mom for their own safety, unless apparently there is a copycat on the loose bent on ruining his reputation. Then he thinks it's perfectly fine to put his daughter in harm's way. When Madcap was running around pretending to be Deadpool, Wade came up with a plan to catch him, inspired by the film Jaws. He would use Ellie as his chum, aka bait, to draw out the shark, aka Madcap. The plan worked, but it put Ellie in a great deal of danger. Fortunately, Quicksilver was on standby to save her, but still pretty reckless parenting on Wade's part. Number 3. Killed Phil Coulson. Anyone that kills Phil Coulson, that's a huge... It's bad. So bad. This mission is given to Deadpool by Captain America, who is later revealed to have been working for Hydra all along. You know, Hail Hydra and all that. Deadpool has always looked up to Captain America and as such excitedly accepts the mission, though he doesn't quite understand why he's required to take out one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s finest agents, but he trusts that Cap has a good reason. In the comics, Deadpool's point of view is also interspersed with Coulson's point of view, and we see the tragic juxtaposition of two men who admired Captain America and everything he has stood for, but who have different information in regards to who Cap really is. Coulson knows that Cap is aligned with Hydra at the time and knows what he has planned. He is seeking to get the word out and even pleads with Deadpool to question the orders he is given, but alas, Coulson is unsuccessful in swaying the mercenary and ends up dead anyways. R.I.P. Coulson. Number 2. Killed the entire Marvel-verse. This didn't happen even just once, by the way. Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe was so popular that it quickly transformed from a one-shot into the Deadpool Killogy, comprised of Deadpool Killustrated and Deadpool Kills Deadpool as well. The first time this happened is because Wade was locked up by his friends in an insane asylum for his own good, but also for kind of the good of everyone else because, you know, he can be pretty annoying. This was overall a bad idea though, as it resulted in Deadpool realizing that he and everyone else in Marvel were fictional characters trapped in a comic book, and he broke himself out, deciding that he needed to free everyone by killing them. The next time around it was less of Deadpool's fault, as he seemed like he was the victim of some brainwashing. Number 1. Wolverine Origins. I know we can't fully blame Deadpool for this one, and that he made amends for this version of Deadpool by killing him at the end of Deadpool 2, but I just can't make a worst things list revolving around Wade Wilson without mentioning this vile atrocity. It hurts my eyes anytime I just even think of it. Ugh. In Wolverine Origins, our first insight into Wade Wilson's character is actually pretty promising. The Merc with a mouth lives up to his reputation of being an expert killing machine who can't stop cracking wise. But then he undergoes some experimentation that takes everything that we love about him away. His mouth is sewn shut and he's fully under control of Stryker, and is now called Weapon 6. I don't know. His katanas are now Wolverine-like blades that emerge from between his knuckles. Great. Just what Deadpool likes to be known as, a bad Wolverine ripoff.
And at number 10, Black Widow. No, not that Black Widow. Well, actually it might have technically been, because at the time Natasha was Yelena in disguise. Regardless, we're talking about the second most prominent woman to hold that mantle, Yelena Belova. Belova, who first appeared in Inhumans issue 5 in 1999, would have a brief fling with the Merc with a mouth when she was the leader of Norman Osborn's Thunderbolts team. Also, sort of a brief fling. Deadpool, who had pissed off Osborn pretty heavily at the time, was targeted by the team and in battle took out the other members of the Thunderbolts, no sweat, but found him struggling against Yelena. Impressed by her combat skills and her looks, he attempted to woo her, and slowly his charm grew on her, and it led to a surprising kiss. Deadpool was likening her to death, one of his biggest loves, more on that later, so he declared his love for Black Widow, and you can imagine how that worked out. And at number 9, Siren. Siren, aka Teresa Cassidy, is the daughter of Banshee, a name she would eventually use as her alias in honor of her late father. First introduced in 1981's Spider-Woman issue 37, she's a mutant with a few nifty tricks up her sleeve, which include her sonic scream, sound manipulation, flight, hypnosis, teleportation, and of course, immortality. That one definitely comes in handy. The two first met when they were on a mission to fight Black Tom Cassidy and Juggernaut. There was a sweet moment when she saw him without his mask and then reinforced his confidence, and then the two just hit it off from there. But unfortunately they weren't endgame. Typhoid Mary would put a rift in their relationship when she disguised herself as Siren and then slept with Deadpool. To make matters worse, when Siren wanted to try to fix things, Copycat, another one of Deadpool's romantic interests that we'll be touching on later, disguised herself as Deadpool and then assaulted Siren. Things only got worse from there, with the two of them later having a one-night stand during a dark period in Siren's life after her father died, with her then stating the romance was over for good. And at number 8, Orxa. Orxa is a character who first appeared in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 33 back in 2011. She's an alien who helps run Futsal Intergalactic Towing and Recovery, and has married a slew of characters in the past whose names she actually has tattooed on her arm. When Deadpool shows up at the Futsal station, having killed one of those husbands, she assaults him. So what does DP do? Well, he gives her a big ol' smooch, which calms her down, but she also believes that the kiss was a marriage proposal. She actually ends up helping save Wade during a mission, one in which another alien named Ob, who loves Orxa, is trying to kill him in, which then left Wade severely injured, with wounds that normally would have killed him if it wasn't for his healing factor. While he heals, Orxa and Ob fall in love, and because his wounds should have technically killed him, he's considered dead, which is the one requirement necessary to allow for a space divorce between him and Orxa to happen. So all in all, this alien lovin' did not last long. Moving on to a surprising number, in at number 7, the Wasp. Deadpool has hooked up with many people over the years, some of which are pretty darn shocking, like that he managed it. Perhaps one of the most shocking is the woman who named the Avengers herself, one of the founding members, Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp. Now to be fair, this went down during Deadpool's Secret Wars, in which he was revealed to have actually been present for Secret Wars. During this, his face had been healed by an extraterrestrial healer, and he was handsome as hell, managing to swoon Wasp, who at the time was the leader of the Avengers. As she puts it, while they lie in bed with one another, I quote, "Well, that was unexpected." Yeah, we feel you there. It's revealed at the end of Secret Wars that Deadpool's wish was that he had never been there, which explains his absence, although in reality it was due to him not having been created yet. And at 6, Satana HELLSTROM. Satana HELLSTROM, often referred to as just Satana, is the daughter of Satan, and the sister of Damon HELLSTROM, who is often referred to as just HELLSTROM. Oh, family ties. As a child, after the death of her mother, she was taken down into the depths of hell by her father to train her in her demonic powers. Deadpool crossed paths with the character during the Deadpool team-up series, in which, after losing her soul in a high-stakes poker game to a group of 4 geeks, she seeks out the Merc with a mouth to help her out. Turns out those geeks are actually all demons in disguise who want to marry her and become the heir to hell. Deadpool comes up with what he deems a brilliant plan and marries her himself, binding her soul with his, giving him more strength to defeat each of the demon suitors. And the demon who won the poker game was like, "Well, sure, you've got a marriage certificate, but if you're dead, that certificate does not count anymore." So he tries to kill Deadpool, but thanks to that power boost, DP is the winner of that match. Unfortunately for our favorite anti-hero though, Satana bails on him and states that they're getting a divorce. And as a part of the divorce settlement, she gets to keep half of his soul. Ouch. All he really wanted was a honeymoon. In at 5, Rogue. Deadpool and Rogue. It's a thing that happened while the two were on the Avengers Unity team. Rogue was leading it at the time, and Deadpool essentially helped keep them afloat with his cash dollars while he was with them. The two eventually developed a mutual respect, but it wasn't until the team took down Red Skull that the two hooked up romantically. After kissing, Rogue had absorbed his skin, to which she replied to his shock by saying, I quote, "I don't care what I look like, Wade, except she said that more southern than I just did." The relationship didn't really go anywhere past that, especially after Wade ended up killing Phil Coulson under Captain America's orders. Well, Cap was all Hydra at the time, that is, so. Killing an ally usually puts a dent in romantic relationships, especially if it was a mutual ally and an uncalled for murder. Oh, what could have been? In at 4, Outlaw. Outlaw, aka Inez Temple, first debuted in Deadpool Volume 1, Issue 65 in 2002, created by Gail Simone. Her nickname is Crazy Inez, which helps paint a picture as to why her and Deadpool hit it off. They met after Deadpool made some major waves in the mercenary world by accomplishing an almost impossible mob hit. There was a lot of flirting between the two, but nothing actually went down, and Deadpool shortly afterwards was assumed to have been killed off. But then, Inez found herself hitting it off with Alex Hayden, aka Agent X, who many had believed at the time was actually Deadpool with amnesia. This was due to several similarities, from the body scars to the healing ability, and Alex had shown up on the scene shortly after Deadpool disappeared. Well, at least it looks like she's got a type. In at 3, Shikla. Shikla is a character who first debuted in Deadpool The Gauntlet Issue 3 in 2014, and was also married to the Merc with the mouth, and also divorced him. She's a succubus, and long ago her and her family ruled over the monster world in a time that predated humans. Being opposed by the vampire race, her family struggled, forced to endure an age-long war with them. And after her brothers had been killed off, Shikla's father sealed her in a coffin until it was safe, or until she got married. Weird. I mean, the safety thing I get, but getting married, I mean, girl can handle her own. Dracula hired Deadpool to bring her to him, but along the way, Deadpool traveled through Greece with the coffin and got into a fight with a minotaur, and the coffin was shattered, releasing an awakening Shikla. She then tried to absorb his life force by kissing him, as a succubus does, but it had no effect on him due to his regenerative healing factor, and it was love at first sight. After some more shenanigans, she and Deadpool returned to New York and got married in Deadpool Volume 3, Issue 27. Flash forward till the Death Do Us Part storyline, when their marriage comes to a halt when Deadpool catches Shikla cheating on him with Werewolf by Night. She eventually ditches him altogether, stating that their marriage was just to protect her from Dracula, and that he sides with humans too much. While that might seem harsh, they were super into each other once upon a time, but a lot of strain had been placed on that relationship. These days, she's actually hooked up with the ultimate undead character himself, Dracula, and the two are married. Her father must not be super into that. Or turning, rolling, spinning in his grave, whatever that saying is. It's like exactly the thing he didn't want to happen. And at number 2, copycat Vanessa Carlyle. Vanessa Carlyle of the comics has a bit of a different story than her live action adaptation. For starters, she has powers. Copycat first hit the scene in 1993 as herself, but technically in 1991 when she was using her shapeshifting abilities to impersonate Domino, it was a whole thing. After being kicked out of her home at a young age, the young mutant shapeshifter went into prostitution, which is where she met Wade Wilson and fell in love with him. He broke up with her after finding out that he had cancer, which broke her heart. Flash forward a bit, in the New Mutants issue 98, she assumed the identity of Domino, and in 1993, Deadpool would reveal her actual identity to the X-Force team. This began an on and off again relationship. She would eventually be fatally injured and died, which was in his arms, telling him that she always loved him. Although without her knowledge, Wade had poured some of his own blood into her wounds, allowing her to mimic his power and heal herself. She would then go on to ruin Deadpool's other relationships after she was in tip-top shape and running her own chimichanga stand. Does she get to eat them for free if she owns it? That doesn't seem like a solid diet to have, but it would be nice to have the option to occasionally have one. And finally, in at number 1, Mistress Death. Okay, sure, Death, also known as Mistress Death or Lady Death, is not technically a superhero, but she is still a powerful cosmic entity, and that's something. That's more than something. She's also a character who Deadpool has had a very prominent romantic relationship with over the years. The appeal with Death is that the two of them are star-crossed lovers. He's a man who can never die, and she is the literal embodiment of death. Now, Wade has an interesting relationship with Death in general. He volunteered for the Weapon X program because he was dying of terminal cancer. Then, when he was experimented on and tortured, all he yearned for was death. Then, his powers, when manifested, prevented him from dying. So while all that was going on, he fell in love with her, being so close to her constantly but never able to touch her. Thanos would make this even more permanent when he cursed him with immortality. Now, despite their star-crossed reality, the two of them, when they do encounter one another, however briefly, have amazing chemistry. Plus, she has a sense of humor too, so. Starting us off in at number 10, Evil Deadpool. Evil can definitely equal scary, and that's very much the case when it comes to Evil Deadpool. He's got a pretty creepy physical appearance. Now, his origin is even crazier. So we all know that over the years, Deadpool has lost a lot of limbs. He's gotten maimed pretty bad at times. And while we don't ever think about where those limbs go, gross, turns out they did end up somewhere. And that place is in the possession of Ellen Whitby, Deadpool's stalker, who saved his chopped off bodily bits in a freezer. Deadpool found out about this and chucked them into a dumpster. As one would. But when they thawed, it turns out they still had Deadpool's regenerative abilities, and they merged together to form an evil Deadpool. Running around like a Marvel Frankenstein, he went to the point of blowing up Deadpool's favorite chimichanga restaurant just to prove a point. Sounds pretty evil to me. In at number 9, Ultimate Deadpool. Ultimate Deadpool, also known as Wade Wilson, was once a US Marine sergeant in the Ultimate Universe, aka Earth 1610. He transitioned into becoming a mercenary, hunting down mutants and kidnapping them, and then forcing them to be hunted alive on live television. He even became the leader of the Reavers. Turns out at some point though, he became less human. Quite literally. His mask was torn off in battle, and it revealed that he was actually a cyborg. In at number 8, Death Mask. Hailing from Earth 11638, Death Mask is essentially Deadpool combined with Dr. Doom. Let that sink in for a second. Considering who both those individuals are. It's kind of terrifying, isn't it? A completely criminal, insane super genius, this version of Deadpool came to be when Reed Richards used a new scientific experiment to try to cure him from a fatal brain tumor. Reed removed the tumor, but not without unexpected consequences. Deadpool's intelligence skyrocketed to super genius levels, and he began referring to himself as Death Mask, wearing a mechanized suit that looks just like Doom's. And he jumps between genius and bad crazy like the flip of a switch. In at 7, D.E.A.D.P.O.O.L. It's about like MODOK. Little is known about this alternate, but considering it's visually clear that he's an alternate version of Deadpool amalgamated with MODOK, we can only imagine the kinds of devastation this Deadpool is capable of. He's a super genius, and also a super assassin. And he has little arms. Aren't they cute? He also has an incredibly dark sense of humor, and while that may make him sound more likable than scary, just imagine what it'd be like to stand off against this fellow. Yeah, now that's some scary stuff, my friends. And at 6, Deadpool Dinosaur. I don't know about you guys, but if I saw a T-Rex running around with a Deadpool mask on, I'd be both horrified, but also intrigued. I mean, he looks pretty awesome, right? Yet at the same time, that's one mean, lean, prehistoric killing machine right there. This is the Wade Wilson of Earth TRN-321, which is an amalgamation of Devil Dinosaur and Deadpool himself. Moving on to number 5, Watari. Also more commonly known as Roninpool, this alternate version lands on this list because he's incredibly intimidating and deadly. Hailing from an alternate Earth known as TRN-150, he's a 17th century samurai-inspired hero from Japan, who appeared in the 2011 5 Ronin series. And he was considered to be the most deadly samurai of his time. His physical scarring is not because of a cancerous tumor though, but rather because he was betrayed by a friend, then ambushed, then maimed, and then left for dead. It's also earned him an unsavory nickname, the Fool. After some serious dabbling in alcoholism, this Deadpool finally did get his revenge and ended up appearing as part of the Deadpool Corps to fight a villain named Dreadpool. More on that guy later though. In at number 4, Deadman Wade. Here's one who aesthetically scares us. Deadman Wade is from the Age of Apocalypse timeline, Earth 295. Now he's obsessed with feeling pain, so much so that he would have his teammate, Danielle Moonstar, inflict pain upon him, for pleasure, of course. Now, as part of the Pale Riders, a team of assassins who worked for Apocalypse, this Deadpool was eventually killed by Nightcrawler. But later, he was resurrected to help enforce the ranks of Weapon Omega, aka the evil Wolverine, and then was later recruited to be a part of the Deadpool Corps. But the worst part? He lacks that psychotically fun-loving personality trait of the 616 Wade Wilson and other alternates. He's actually quite depressed and often confused, which is tragic, but he's also a psychotic killer, so... Moving on to number 3, HEADPOOL. HEADPOOL is one of the most recognizable alternates of Deadpool. HEADPOOL originates from Earth 2149, otherwise known as the Zombieverse, or Marvel Zombies. Now, Marvel Zombies was very similar to the 616 universe prior to the zombie infection that devastated it. That went down when Sentry punched his way from another alternate universe, carrying a disease that would turn any living being into a flesh-eating zombie. It makes COVID seem much less scary, doesn't it? HEADPOOL used to be a zombie Deadpool, being infected shortly after the infection broke out, and was part of the attack on the Silver Surfer. Now after that, he seemingly disappeared, until he popped up on Earth 616, calling him the Merc with half a mouth. He ended up getting decapitated though, reduced to only a head, hence the name HEADPOOL. Later, he would be finished for good when evil Deadpool stuck his head into a microwave, causing him to explode. Up next, number 2, DREADPOOL. DREADPOOL is often considered to be the deadliest alternate version of Wade Wilson. From Earth 12101, he's an alternate version who isn't referred to as Dreadpool in the comics. That's actually the product of him being referred to as such by co-creator Cullen Bunn. First appearing in 2012's Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe issue 1, Dreadpool is a version who really loves murdering people. In Deadpool Killustrated, he started a multiversal massacre, trying to wipe heroes from the pages of literature at the realm of ideas, which was known as the Ideaverse. Creative way of killing a lot of characters. Dreadpool stuck around for a year before getting killed by the 616 Deadpool after the other Deadpools from the Deadpool Corps were killed off. And last but not least, in at number 1, VENOMPOOL. Dreadpool might be the most sinister of the Deadpool alternates on this list, but VENOMPOOL is by far the scariest looking alternate. He first appeared in Venom Deadpool What If back in 2011, a 4-part miniseries that followed this venomized Deadpool hanging out in the 1980s in the alternate reality of Earth 90211. Now his origin story follows him pre-venomized. He was hired by Galactus to kill the Beyonder. Wade Wilson found the Beyonder at a nightclub, but was then enticed by the Beyonder to party with him. So while the two were hanging out in the Beyonder's flying limousine, Spider-Man shows up, demanding that the Beyonder rid him of the symbiote costume. Spider-Man is then shot out of the vehicle, but the symbiote jumps off of him and then bonds to Deadpool, and chaos ensues. Well, fun-loving chaos, but he's still scary nonetheless.
Number 10. Healing tied to mental state. Now most everyone knows about Deadpool's enhanced healing factor and how he can heal from pretty much anything. He's been decapitated, he's been turned to a puddle of goo, and then he had to drink cable, it was a whole thing. But did you know that how effective his healing factor is tied to his mental state? So he heals faster and more handily when he is not only conscious, cause then there is some intent behind the power, but if he is unconscious or depressed, then it can be much slower. Which is actually a state Deadpool occupies more than some people think, as he has a lot more to him than just quirky fourth wall breaks. His first series by Joe Kelly, the one that began to define him and move him away from the Deathstroke ripoff he began as under Liefeld, actually had a lot of angst and sad Deadpool, sitting in the shower and the like. Deadpool has range. Number 9. Invulnerable to telepathy. So Deadpool's healing factor actually renders him resistant, extremely resistant to telepathy. That's because the neurons in his head are in a constant state of flux, with his dying cells being rejuvenated at an accelerated rate. However, this is a sometimes, who's writing Deadpool ability, meaning that the level of resistance can vary. Still, even if a telepath can get in there, they can rarely make sense of everything going on, especially back when Deadpool still had multiple caption boxes. Number 8. Mimicry, from the Ultimate Verse. So we're going over to the Ultimate Verse for this one, where characters had different abilities and the like, just cuz, fresh slate, etc. The Ultimate Universe was a comic line started by Marvel in order to create a jumping on point for new readers, who may be intimidated by the huge backlog of Marvel canon. It would of course eventually develop a large backlog of its own, and be done in by some large, questionable events. Many fans will point to the very gory Ultimatum as the turning point. The Deadpool of the Ultimate Verse was a cyborg who could mimic people's appearances and voices, but not powers, so close, but no life model decoy. Still, you could pass as another person like that for a while, if you know no harrowing situation came up and they weren't a person who just used their powers willy-nilly. Number 7. Immortal. Deadpool is effectively immortal, and for a time that was independent of his healing factor, though that of course helped. Rather, he had been cursed by Thanos, who was jealous of his relationship with Death, cause Death had quite the fondness for Wade, and for Thanos not so much. However, over time it has shifted to Deadpool's healing factor just being so intense there is no stopping it. So his time with Death is fleeting. They share brief moments until he returns to the land of the living. He even low-key cheated on his wife with her. This is when he had her kill him so he could go help resurrect Peter Parker, who he had killed, under mistaken instructions that he was a villain. I say low-key because he was high-key emotionally cheating with Peter in their series Deadpool/Spider-Man. But then, him and his wife ended up divorcing for reasons explained in another book that you were also supposed to be reading, because give Marvel all of your money, so it was fine. Number 6. Invulnerability to pain. Now there have been different schools of thought on this one. One is that Deadpool is in constant pain because of his cancer's never-ending battle with his healing factor, hence he is in a way numb to everything going on around him. The second is that the constant flux of his healing factor deadens him to pain, since his surface is never truly stable and his skin is always in flux. Either way, Deadpool can take a lot of punishment, being able to quip his way through being disemboweled or dismembered, or even just a floating head, and we're not just talking about Headpool. Number 5. Super strength? So this factoid tends to arise from the fact that Deadpool has lifted the hammer of Thor. Let me explain. Firstly, some would take this to mean that he is worthy, while others would have it mean that it must be strong, because no way should Deadpool be able to lift that hammer except for comedic purposes. Which is of course what this was. You had Deadpool in the little winged helmet with a cape, manipulated by Loki into stealing the hammer. But here's the thing, he never actually had Thor's hammer. Loki cloaked the real hammer and then transformed Deadpool's clothes. However, that aside, in general, many fans feel that the feats Deadpool accomplishes require some form of super strength in order for him to pull them off. What do you think? Super strength or just years of murking people? Number 4. HULKPOOL. This character appears in the comic Hulked Out Heroes. He is a gamma irradiated version of Deadpool. So a Hulk Deadpool, all that power and rage and strength and Hulkness, being sent to kill his original Deadpool because he was a murderer with no remorse, alternate timeline things. This was a whole world of Hulks, hence the title of the series. HULKPOOL travels around time, finding himself in World War II, eventually kills the alternate Deadpool and makes his way back to the main verse with the help of his friend Bob the Hydra agent. Oh, Hydra Bob. Now there's a fun character. Very venture bros, just low-level grunts in huge organizations trying to get by. Number 3. VENOMPOOL. The Venomverse graced the world with many Venoms from all over. So this version of Deadpool comes from the edge of the Venomverse, like the edge of the Spider-Verse, get it? So he was investigating a warehouse full of parasitic worms and ended up bonding with the symbiotes that he could expel the worms who had attached themselves to him, which of course gave him all the powers of a symbiote. So of course the constructs, the excess strength, and agility. Venompool would be willingly absorbed by a member of the poison species, the natural predators of the Clintar, aka symbiotes. And as a result, he would become Poison Deadpool, so that he could be a double agent, cause no matter the universe, Deadpool is Deadpool. Watch out. Number 2. Caption boxes. For a period of Deadpool's history, he had multiple narration boxes, and they all had different voices and typesets and colors, and would tell him different things. It was thought for a while that this was the manifestation of a power that allowed him to be aware of the fourth wall, and also assess situations from a variety of angles. It would later be revealed that the caption boxes were actually different characters in his head, being caused when Deadpool has regenerated near someone who was also for all intents and purposes dead. So he has merged them. So Madcap, a Captain America villain, was the more psychotic voice, while the other voice was never properly identified, though some claim was Deadpool's psychiatrist. So Deadpool, he can absorb people and keep their consciousnesses alive. Terrifying. And number 1. Enter white space. Deadpool can move with ease in Gwenpool's white space, and as seen in the series Gwenpool Strikes Back, can lead the way into it. The white space is a metatextual space where Gwenpool operates, observing, changing, and mocking the Marvel world. Deadpool was able to inhabit it, understand it, and create a flowchart within it. It makes sense, what with his meta-awareness, that he should be able to move with ease in such a space. However, everything except the end retcon which happened in that series needs to be taken with a grain of salt, as the author said via Gwen in the story that it was meant to be future-proof. Still, Deadpool was there, and he did it.
Number 10. Deadpool Dinosaur. Deadpool Dinosaur is a version of Deadpool that is a T-Rex. The main thing that indicates his Deadpool-ness is that he's wearing a Deadpool mask and is part of the evil Deadpool Corps. The evil Deadpool Corps are a group of villainous Deadpools originally led by an alternate Deadpool, DREADPOOL. They aim to eliminate all Deadpools across the multiverse. Deadpool works to stop them and annihilate this villainous group in the story Deadpool Kills Deadpool with the help of his own good team of Deadpools, known simply as the Deadpool Corps. Deadpool Dinosaur is accompanied by his own Moon Boy, who looks a lot like Logan in the face, if I'm being honest. Is this just me noticing this? This version of Moon Boy also fights from Deadpool Dinosaur's saddle with a big gun. The two are basically an alternate version of Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur, with of course some Deadpool mixed in there. Number 9. Deadpool. This version of Deadpool is basically a combination of former evil AIM leader MODOK and Deadpool himself. One can assume he has the brilliant mind of MODOK but also has the brilliant fighting skills of Deadpool, even with his tiny, disproportionate arms. Not only does Deadpool seem to fight with swords, but he also has 2 turret firearms on his head. While MODOK stands for mental organism designed only for killing, Deadpool supposedly stands for destructive engine of assassination, despite panpygoptosis, obsessed with opponent liquidation. Number 8. Venompool. In a story that has continued through various What If issues, we get to meet Venompool. Venompool is an alternate version of Deadpool from the alternate Earth of 90211. Here Deadpool ends up becoming bonded with the Venom symbiote during his time with the Beyonder, following a run-in with Peter Parker, who was bonded with the symbiote at the time. The symbiote leaves a defeated Peter Parker for Deadpool and bonds with him. Later on in his life, this is a path that leads Deadpool to end up killing all the heroes of his universe, whom he does not find attractive. He does let the attractive ones live. I guess that's something, I guess. Following a therapy session with Doc Samson, who this version of Deadpool also promptly kills thereafter, he realizes he needed to be true to who he was. This allowed Venompool to accept that who he was a massive jerk, and prompted him to use a weapon called the Retcon Expungifier to wipe out the entire universe. Basically, he's in the running for being the biggest jerk of all the Deadpool alternates. Number 7. Cesspool. We don't know that much about Cesspool. Like many of the darkest alternates of Deadpool, Cesspool was part of the evil Deadpool Corps. What we do know of him is that he has a terrifying appearance and mutation. He's completely covered in mouths with a razor-sharp teeth and uses these to try and devour his opponents. Yipes. This is like something straight out of a horror movie. Number 6. Galactipool. This alternate version of Deadpool was too dark for even main continuity Deadpool himself. Galactipool shows up just as we thought the fight was coming to a close between the Deadpool Corps and the evil Deadpool Corps. Galactipool is a combination of Galactus and Deadpool, and Wade wondered where in the heck the evil Deadpool Corps even found an alternate like this Galactus Pool. Fortunately, despite him likely having I guess some kind of intense cosmic power, alternate Deadpool, Lady Deadpool, manages to defeat Galactus Galactipool using the Deadpool core ship B. Arthur. Sadly, this was the end of B. Rest in peace, B. Number 5. WOLVERINEPOOL. What happens when you take Deadpool and Wolverine and mix them together? You get WOLVERINEPOOL. WOLVERINEPOOL comes from the alternate Earth of 1946. WOLVERINEPOOL is the ultimate Weapon X program weapon. He is a version of Wade Wilson who had adamantium bonded to his skeleton. He belonged to the evil Deadpool core and was killed during a fight with the non-evil Deadpool core. It is assumed that he of course has a healing factor, but not one strong enough to regenerate himself when reduced to just a skeleton, and likely a healing factor that was weaker than both the main continuity Wolverine and the main continuity Deadpool. Number 4. REDTOOL. REDTOOL is actually not from an alternate Marvel universe, but is actually from DC Comics. Oddly enough, while Marvel's Deadpool was created by Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza to be a parody of DC's Deathstroke, DC then decided to themselves parody Marvel's own parody of their character, creating REDTOOL, who is a parody of Deadpool. He's a parody of a parody. Still, just because we are stuck in a weird perpetuation of parody doesn't mean that REDTOOL has to be a super light and fun character. Although he kind of is that too. REDTOOL is dark in the fact that he only fights with tools, including power tools, making his physical conflicts also appear a lot more gruesome than his Marvel counterpart. And he doesn't have a healing factor, instead he just can't feel pain, due to having a part of his brain removed, which also makes him somehow even more disturbing of a character than Marvel's Deadpool. Pretty impressive actually. Good job, DC. Number 3. HEADPOOL. HEADPOOL is the version of Deadpool from the Marvel Zombieverse of Earth 2149. He is aptly named HEADPOOL because in the end, that is all that's left of him. A head. But a head who is still very much alive, that is, and would still very much like to eat you. This version of Deadpool was also not confined to just existing in the alternate Earth of Earth 2149. He ended up making his way to Earth 616 while he still had most of his full body actually. He ended up making his way to Earth 616 while he still had mostly his full body actually. He was thought to have been completely decimated during a fight there, but it turns out he survived, but simply had lost the rest of his body and was now just a head. Number 2. DREADPOOL. One of the darkest alternates around, DREADPOOL is the version of Deadpool who appeared in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. He is from the alternate Earth of 12101, where he was driven even more insane than he already is. A therapist known as Dr. Benjamin Brighton attempted to brainwash Deadpool so he might use him for his own means. However, this failed, and instead ridded Deadpool of his standard inner voices, replacing them with a single voice. This voice in his head seemed fully aware that nothing in the Marvel Universe was actually real, and encouraged Deadpool to free everyone from this fictional prison or fictional reality by killing them all off, which Deadpool then proceeded to do. Basically, DREADPOOL is from Deadpool's darkest timeline. Number 1. Evil Deadpool. Evil Deadpool is an alternate Deadpool from the main reality of Earth 616. He is sort of a Franken version of Deadpool who was created by the deranged and psychotic Dr. Ella Whitby. Ella Whitby accidentally helped to create him from storing bits and pieces of Deadpool's body, which had been lost throughout his life while he fought. She collected these because she was obsessed with Deadpool. She was also madly in love with Wade. Though they were stored in her fridge, they were likely part of her shrine of collectibles of Deadpool. In the end, Deadpool found these parts in her fridge and tossed them out. As they thawed in the garbage bag he disposed of them in, they came to life and rejoined together to create Evil Deadpool. A version of Deadpool that is evil and just an all-around complete jerk for the sake of being one, whose fighting skills rival the real Deadpool and who also has a backwards arm, which actually proves to be surprisingly useful in fights for him.